Shine with Kendéll Lenice. Real talk for real people. Let's shine together.
Allow me to introduce myself. Thank you for shining with me first and foremost every week on Shine with Kendéll Lenice. I am a certified transformational life coach, speaker, author, as well as a certified financial coach. Each week I hope to elevate you, educate you, and entertain you with our various guests and various topics here on Shine with Kendéll Lenice. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to tell a friend. And now on to this week's show. Hey everybody, I hope everybody is doing well and welcome to Shine. Thank you for shining with me. Again, this is Kendéll Lenice. I go live every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But the good thing about podcast is you can listen to podcasts at any time from anywhere. At least Shine with Kendéll Lenice you can. You can go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Spreaker, and a whole lot more. If you listen to podcasts, just go wherever you listen, and I'm sure you'll find Shine with Kendéll Lenice. Just search for me, and you should find me there. But also, please do me a favor, guys, and subscribe to the podcast. That's how I get sponsors. You know, each week we're growing. People are getting the word out about Shine. So please tell your friends and family about Shine with Kendéll Lenice. We're making momentum, and I'm just so, I'm so proud, and thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If this is your first time discovering Shine, I welcome you. Please subscribe and tell a friend or a family member, or both. How about that? If you always listen to Shine with Kendéll Lenice, I humbly appreciate you. I am grateful for your support. Please tell your friends and family about Shine, because I'm trying to grow this podcast. I produce it, I direct it, I engineer it, I get the guests. So I'm like a one-stop shop right here. So of course I want to continue with anything. And as a life coach, and I talk about this all the time, is just really growing your brand, growing your business, and really having goals set for yourself, to do what you want to do and be who you want to be in business and in life. But remember, you are your brand. All right, before we go any further, of course, as always, I want to start with this week's life note. Be right back. All right, it's time for this week's life note. All right, so this week's life note is rules for a happy marriage. Number 1, only yell at each other if there is a house fire going on. Number 2, never go to bed mad, stay up and fight. And number 3, sex, lots of it. And that's what we will be talking about today. I am so excited about today's show because I have Sex Coach Cain here. Everybody loved her on part 1. We did sex and intimacy, and we got a lot of listenership. A lot of people were talking about the show. They were sharing the show, and I was so happy and so proud of that, because this is a show where you'll get a little bit of everything. Shine with Kendéll Lenice is all about educating you, elevating you, and entertaining you. So when people talk about sex, they talk about sex as if it's dirty. You know, if you are religious, then of course it's married sex. But people are so afraid to really open up and to really talk about sex. So I'm excited to do this show, and I'm bringing you to the show. And they're like, "Oh, you had a sex show?" And then people whisper it. It's the oddest thing. These are adults, but people are whispering about sex. So I want to stop the whispers and talk about it. It's a part of life. That's how we all got here. And I think that we should still continue to keep the conversation going and talk about sex. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about sex, because I know you guys are doing it. So if you're doing it, then you could talk about it, right? I always say if you can swap spit, you can swap information. So I think that's important. But back by popular demand tonight is, again, let me just say, the show is about, I talked to Coach Cain and she said, so what are we talking about today? And I was like, more sex and better sex. She was like, okay, cool. Because she is a professional. And I said, I'm sure you can answer all of these questions. So I'm excited to have her. Again, this is part 2 with Sex Coach Cain. She is a certified sex coach. All right. So Cain is passionate about her career. She is a clinical psychologist. She might be that too. A sexologist, certified sex and relationship coach, and a certified cognitive behavioral life coach who is dedicated to educating and empowering individuals about sexuality. Throughout the span of over 2 decades, Cain has gained extensive knowledge in the field of sexuality. And she is a member of the World Association of Sex Coaches and remains a lifelong student of learning. I love that. Her goal is to normalize sex and to teach people how to achieve the sexual fulfillment we all deserve. Her nurturing and caring nature fosters environments free of judgment, shame, guilt, and always welcoming to all. Currently, Cain serves as the owner of Romantic Discovery, where she leads educational interactive workshops, group coaching sessions, conversation parties, and facilitates an online training program. She also provides coaching and services to those seeking assistance with their sexual concerns and relationship challenges. Cain currently resides in the Detroit, Michigan. When she isn't coaching and teaching, Cain loves spending time with her amazing family. She is happily married for 30 years, y'all, and is a proud mother and grandmother. Let's welcome Coach Cain to shine. Coach Cain, you there?
I am here. Hello.
Thank you so much for returning. I appreciate you. I really, really do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed myself last time.
Good. We had a good time. We had a very good time. We were laughing and cutting up, and people were thoroughly entertained. I have to tell you something. I won't say her name, but I had a 60-plus-year-old woman listening to the show. And she was so upset. Yes, but she was so upset every time she got interrupted and every time her phone rang. And she hadn't listened to Shine, but she had listened to Shine for a minute. And she said, well, why didn't you tell me you had a sex show? I would have been listening. So she thoroughly enjoyed it.
I love it.
So, and of course, she probably, well, I'm not even going to say, but she needs a little more of it. That's for sure. So I love that she's 60 something and she still was ready to rumble.
Yes.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that, Coach Cain. So you do coaching and you do workshops and you have online programs and all of that good stuff. Who is the oldest person that's come to you and said, hey, let's talk about sex. Let's talk about intimacy. Let me get some tips, whatever the case may be. What was your oldest client? Who was your oldest client?
The oldest was at a party. It was actually at a party. Someone booked me to come in and present. And she was 74. And I was so intrigued with her. She was the light of the party.
Yes, I love that.
74.
But look, what did
74,
she...
so...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry you're going in and out. I'm losing you here and there. But, no, she had, I sat down next to her because I wanted to hear what knowledge she had because I'm a sponge. So I said, maybe I could pick up something from you.
Right.
But it was what was so intriguing and why I found her so fascinating is that she was still very much a sexual being. She was so open and she was so energetic. We talked about oral sex. We talked about masturbation. I mean, she just was so awesome. I loved her.
See, and you know 74. What? And I love that too, but that's a myth. Like people do think that once you get to a certain age, you're no longer interested. You just want companionship and you're not interested in being sexually active. Why do you think that is?
That's correct.
Why do you think people think that?
Well, I think it's because, our bodies tend to not work the same. We age, we look different, we don't move as quickly as we once did. And we also may run into some challenges such as, erection. Our partner may have challenges with erection. The female body person may have challenges with lubrication. So they may have ailments or illnesses. So it's this myth that just because these things occur that maybe we're not sexual beings anymore, which is so not true. So not true.
Right.
I think I'll be having sex until well into 70.
I love that. So that's, and that's a good point that you made, and you use yourself as an example. So do you think because you have a healthy sex life now that it's just going to transition into that? Or like, what do you think? Like, how do you know that you will have one? And I want to answer that. I want to ask you that for people out there, because if they have a sexy sex life now, I'm getting tongue-tied tonight, but if they have a healthy sex life now, does that necessarily mean that they'll have one in the future, or is it what you make it?
It's what you make it. And our sexuality and our sexual expression is about our choice. It's about our choices. You can also argue the same thing in long-term relationships. You know what I mean? Our sex life can go down in long-term relationships, but in order to keep it hot and steamy, we have to make a choice that that's what we're going to do. And the same holds true as we age. We have to make a concerted effort to be intimate. Now, again, our sex life will look a little different. We won't necessarily be swinging from the chandeliers when we're in our 60s and 70s. But that doesn't mean that we can't express ourselves. It doesn't mean that we can't engage in all different types of things. It just depends on what our bodies are capable of doing. A lot of times I get questions, like I actually recently got a question where a person's mate was experiencing problems getting erections. So she thought that their sex life was over, and he thought his sex life was over.
Oh, wow.
But that's not true. A man can still ejaculate even with a soft penis. He still will enjoy being touched. So as you age, it may not be as erect, or it may not stay as hard as long, but that doesn't mean that you can't still touch, you can't still cuddle, you can't still engage in manual oral stimulation. There's all types of things you can do.
Okay, so
but you have to make a choice.
Right.
That's what you want to do.
Right. So you're saying even if a man doesn't get super hard, if you will, and if it's just a little limp, but you may not be able to have intercourse, but you may be able to do other things that can satisfy and please you and your partner.
That is correct. Pleasure is not limited to just intercourse. When we speak of sex, intercourse is the only sexual act where it requires a hard penis.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
But there's other things to do.
Right.
But again, going back to whether or not we're going to have these type of sex lives, we decide. It doesn't even matter if you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s. At our age, 40s and 50s, you have to decide that you want to have a good sex life as well, even now.
Yeah.
So the same holds true as we age.
So I find that interesting because you're right. When people think about sex, they think about intercourse, and they feel that that's the only thing that they can do is, a man entering a woman. That's the only thing they can do. And even when a woman, it's that time of the month, and I've heard people say, and I had a conversation, actually, I was doing some couples coaching, and a couple they were talking about that. She felt neglected and ignored that time of the month. And he said, and I heard him say, well, we can't do anything anyway. So I'm glad you brought up that point. There are so many other things that you can do sexually other than intercourse.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And our times of month, we're going to have those. And that doesn't mean that we have to stop being intimate.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Okay. So
they, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I think you're going in and out, and I think yours is delayed for some reason. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I don't know what's going on with our connection, but it's okay. We're going to get through this.
Absolutely.
But as it relates to monthly. Sex as a whole is what steps we want to take to make our sex life look like how we want it to look. You know, whether we're on our period, whether we're going through ailments, whether or not we're aging, whether or not there's disabilities, there's still ways for us to engage in pleasure.
Absolutely. Well said. All right. So as we're talking about that, and the title of this podcast, this episode is More Sex, Better Sex. What advice would you give a couple who wants to have more sex or better sex, but right now they're not having any sex and the sex that they're having is not worth having? What advice would you give that couple that's struggling in that area?
The first question is, why aren't you having sex regularly? What's going on in your life? Is it that you're busy and that you've let life get in the way? Is it that you're stress fatigued? Is it that there's challenges in the relationships? So what I would look at is exactly what's going on in that relationship, and then we would address it. If it's a situation where just simply life is getting in the way, you have to make it a priority, essentially, is what's going to happen. Just like we plan, we kind of touched on this in the last episode. Mm-hmm. Just like we plan everything else, we need to plan sex and make our life a priority. If you don't have desire for sex for whatever reason, you have to make, or whichever partner has to make a conscious decision to say, okay, I'm going to do it anyway.
All right, so you're saying even if they, and I want you to repeat that. Can you say that once more? Because I think that was a very important statement you made. You said, even if you don't feel like it.
Yes, even if you don't feel like it. So oftentimes I'll have women tell me that, Cain, I just don't have that desire anymore. Yeah. And again, there's a number of reasons why we may not have desire anymore, but sometimes we need to just give ourselves permission to go ahead and do it anyway. Yeah. Because oftentimes women are more responsive when it comes to sexuality versus being spontaneous. And what that means is that we may not initially want to have sex, but once we get into the act, our body tends to respond, and then we enjoy it once we're in the actual act itself.
It's like riding a bike. So you'll remember everything you do. You might not want to, but as soon as you get at the groove, then the groove continues.
Yes, or you may enjoy it. But again, we also have to look at, like, what's going on? What dynamic is happening? Why aren't you having sex?
Right.
Is the sex bad?
Right.
Is it bad sex? So if it's bad sex, what can we do to make that sex life better? How was your sex life when you first got together? Mm-hmm. What did you do to make it exciting? You know, it's things like that you want to explore. You have to bring novelty into your sex life in order to keep it exciting.
See, that's why I think it's important to have shows like this and to have people like you and just to have open conversation and dialogue, because like I said in the intro, so many people are afraid to talk about sex. Even when they had questions, they were like, don't say my name. And of course I'm not going to, but I just find that interesting that so many people can do it, but it's difficult for people to talk about. And I know we touched on that on part 1. So let's talk about sex drives. We already touched on it a little bit. What causes it for men and women? Is it, because I know sometimes it could be emotional, right? Sometimes it can be physical. But what are some of the main reasons you see that people lose their sex drives?
It can be repressed or unexpressed emotions from a past or present situation. Mm-hmm. Say if a person has some kind of buried anger or they have resentment mm-hmm. that they haven't worked out. Mm-hmm. It could be our declining hormone levels, mm-hmm. you know, the estrogen in women, low testosterone in men. It could be side effects of medication. A lot of people do not stop to see that it's their medication, mm-hmm. blood pressure medicine, mm-hmm. antidepressants, things like that mm-hmm. can really, really impact our sex life. Like, for example, with antidepressants in women, it can make it almost, or even also in men, it can make it almost impossible for you to orgasm. I don't care what you're doing or how long you're doing it.
So if you're taking an antidepressant.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Some of them actually impacts the our ability to experience the pleasure or to experience that orgasm. So a lot of times what will happen is that when people are having low desire, I'll question, like, what kind of medications are you on? And then I'll suggest that they talk to their doctor to maybe see if there's an alternative that has less sexual side effects to them.
Or a
like,
natural
for example,
alternative.
Or a natural alternative, but some people that are on certain medications, they need this medication and they can't necessarily discontinue use. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we need to find an alternative that has less side effects. It could be aging, things slow down, things sag, functions are different as we age. So that causes low desire. Again, we're going back to relationship issues, money issues, problems with children, disappointments, things like that. It could be physical disabilities, and it could be just someone just not having time and just not having the energy. You work all day, you're stressed, and sex is just not the priority.
Well, how important is a priority if you're in a relationship?
The importance depends on the couple.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is that there are some people that are totally fine with having sex once every 6 months. Both of them are totally fine with that type of interaction. And if you're in that type of relationship, that's fine. Where it becomes problematic is when you have uneven sexual desire. So if one partner wants it and the other partner doesn't want it, that's where you end up with your problem.
If you're not sexually compatible.
Yes, but, in many relationships, sex is important, but it doesn't necessarily have to be sex. It could be intimacy. It could be touch. It could be cuddling. It could be some type of emotional expression. You need that in a relationship, whether you're having intercourse or not.
Right.
So it's important.
Right. And that's, again, open dialogue, open conversation. I think a lot of problems, and it sounds so cliche and basic, but a lot of problems can be solved by communicating. Just having that conversation, because a lot of people speculate. Well, if I'm married or if I'm in a relationship, I should have sex X amount of times a week. If I don't, then the relationship is in trouble. Or, like you said, if somebody's not having sex but 2-3 times out the year, once out the year, twice out the year, then people are like, oh, your marriage or relationship is doomed because you're not having frequent sex. But like you said, if both of the people in the relationship are fine with that, then it works, whatever works for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what can you do to assure a great sexual experience?
First, you have to know your own. First, you have to know your own body. I say it all the time. Sex is an art form. It's something that we learn. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is learn your own body. Understand what brings you pleasure. Understand what your wants, needs, and desires are, so you can articulate that to your partner. Secondarily, you want to master your partner. That's what makes sex good. So I believe that we both people should be givers. So if you're giving in, you should give and you should receive. So you give your partner, they're experiencing pleasure. When you take the time to receive, you're experiencing pleasure. But again, both parties have to learn their bodies and they have to learn their partner's body. Because as we both know, when you change partners, what's required is different.
Yep, and that's what I was going to say.
Everybody don't like the same thing.
Yep, and that's what I was going to say, Coach Cain, because a lot of people just do what they've been doing with everybody else, and then they come to the next person and do it, and that person is not satisfied, they're not aroused, they're not entertained, they're not excited, and then another person might look at that as saying, well, what do you mean, such and such, was okay with that, or my past was okay with that, whoever that was in your past. I've heard conversations like that because some people don't realize that. I think a lot of people just look at sex as sex, and they don't really look at it as pleasing the individual, getting to know what that person wants, what that person needs, what that person expects during a sexual experience. And I think that people just think they can bring the same old stale moves to each relationship and then expect that person to be pleasured. And they're like, come on now.
Right. But see, that also goes back to what you talked about earlier with communication.
Yeah.
We are afraid to say, we're worried about damaging each other's ego.
Yeah.
We're worrying about saying, I don't quite like it that way. Can you move a little bit to the left? Can
right.
you do it a little bit more? I always crack the joke, we'll put each other's genitals in our mouth and do various things to our partner, but we can't tell them to move to the left.
And I always say, if you can swap spit, you can swap information. So it's the same concept.
Yes.
But it almost reminds me of the movie I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, where she was like, to the left, to the left, to the right, to the right. Remember that?
Yes. And you have to say these things.
Right.
The only thing you're doing, when you are quiet and you're not expressive and you don't tell your partner what you want and need, you're the one that's missing out.
And you can't get mad.
You're the one ultimately. How are you going to get mad?
Mm-hmm.
But we have challenges. Now, I do know that sometimes people worry about how their partner will respond.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes their partner may not be as receptive, but
or where'd you learn that move?
How you say it. Yep. They have to tell them. I was watching Coach Cain.
Right, and that's so funny that you said that, because people are afraid to, if they want to be expressive sexually in a way that I guess their partner's not used to a man or a woman being, then it's almost a judgment zone. Like, well, where did you learn that? Or why are you doing that? Or, instead of just having that conversation. That's why I think with all things, sex included, and I'm going to keep saying this, it's so important to communicate. But a lot of people have difficulties. Like you said, they don't want to be judged. They don't want to be looked at in a certain way. And they don't want to hurt someone's feelings. But to me, if you want it right, then you're going to have to do that, right?
Or yes, that is correct. And then another thing too is that women are things that may have brought us pleasure. Say if our partner finds something that's pleasurable to us, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be pleasurable if they do the exact same move next week. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work, because the vagina is fickle. The vulva is fickle. So depending on where our hormones are, depending on what time of the month, it may not be as pleasurable.
It might not work. That's it.
It might not work, and that's why it's so important that you keep a mental note of what's going on with your partner. You pay attention to what brings them pleasure. But again, you have to also tell your partner what brings you pleasure. And
it's so funny because the sad thing is, I don't even think people go that deep, and they should. I'm just listening to you, and I'm like, I think people should really do it. I think so many people just jump into the bed. They don't even have time sometimes to really ask the questions or to know what they want or to know their bodies. So as I listen to you speak, I'm like, wow, interesting.
Let me tell you what I used to do when I used to date. So this was years ago, and I would tell people, I said, okay, the first encounter with me is not going to be good. And they'd be like, what do you mean? I was like, it's just not. I said, it's not going to be good because I am taking mental notes. So I use it as time to play and explore when I'm with a person for the first time or when I was with a person for the first time. So I would tell them, I would make it safe for them to communicate. I'm like, you could just moan if I hit a spot. And I would just kind of go on an explore, and I would just explore all the erogenous zones, and I would make a mental note. Because our bodies give off cues. There's clues that our bodies give off when we're experiencing pleasure, if you pay attention. So if you're, say, for instance, if you're pleasuring a man and you hit a spot, you look at his toes, they could be fluttering. That's a spot for him. Look at his jawbone. Is he flexing his jawbone? Is it tight? Look at his thigh muscle. So as you're moving through his body, these are tricks I teach in my workshops. As you're moving through their body and you're exploring, trying to find what brings them pleasure, pay attention to these spots. Even if he's not speaking, his body is telling you that this is something that he's enjoying. Then you take that information, you make a mental note of all of that, and then when you come back your third, fourth, fifth, sixth times, then you know exactly where to go and what to do.
So that sounds like a formula for better sex.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
So I'm listening to you, and this thing is serious. This thing is serious.
It is. You know, people really take sexuality for granted.
They do.
Really do.
And that's what
They do.
as I listen to you, that's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You can create. The way you become masterful is paying attention through communication
Wow.
and making the person feel safe and comfortable.
Yeah.
That's how you get a person to really express. That's how you get to really explore. That's how you get to understand. But just like, again, how we learn other things, we have to learn how to give pleasure and how to pleasure ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing.
I think that's important. You can't expect someone else to please you if you don't even know, if you haven't taken the time to explore your own body and to really know what you want and don't want. And I think it's important because you can't explain that to someone else. You can't tell someone else what you need or want, and you have no clue.
Yes.
Because,
and one of the things when I was in training, one of the things that we were taught is that we are responsible for our own pleasure. If you don't know what it is that you want, you're never going to get it.
Yeah. So have you always been a sexual person? How did you even become a clinical sexologist and a certified sex and relationship coach? Is that something that you've been doing for quite some time because you were interested in sex, because you were sexual, or because you just had a vault of information?
You know, it started off really as a hobby. It was strictly a hobby. I used to study a lot. I used to read a lot, read lots of books. I started reading like about 14 when I didn't even understand what the words meant.
Wow.
So I would read books, and I started reading and reading and reading. And I was also that friend that everybody would go to and share their secrets to. You know, and then they had a lot of sexual knowledge, so I was that person that they would talk to. So I wanted to be a sexual researcher. I wanted to work at the Kinsey Institute. That was my life goal. But
wow.
I ended up getting married and pregnant very young, as a teenager.
Yeah.
So all of that switched. So as time went on, I decided that I was going to start selling adult novelty. So I opened up an adult novelty company.
Oh, wow.
And so I had never been to a toy party, and I didn't want to go under any company. I just said, I'm going to do it like how I think it should be done. Well, one of the things that I noticed was that when they would get me in the room to order, it became a counseling session. I noticed that people had so many questions that they just didn't want to ask in front of everyone. And so I said, wow, where would one go to ask these type of questions? Where would one go to not feel judged and shamed for something that we were never taught? We're not taught this. Our parents didn't teach us, and they don't teach us in the school system.
That's so true.
That's how it ended up happening. So it kept progressing, and then I decided to go get formally trained. Now, it was funny because I knew a lot. At least I thought I knew a lot until I started getting formally trained and working with Patty Britton, who is like the foremost pioneer in the field. And I started noticing that the sexuality field is huge. It's huge. It's so many genres that you can cover, and I don't cover everything. So that's kind of how it started. It's my passion. It's something that I feel that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, I want people to feel safe and to have some place to ask questions.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of how it started.
I think that's super. I think that's super, super, super awesome. It's interesting because the first time I ended up in a sex store was by mistake. And it's interesting because when I think about this, they make sex so dirty and seedy, and the toys and the videos and all of that, they make it so seedy. Because I went into, this was back in the day when they had video stores, and I went into a video store, And I was like, why are these videos dusty? Just a regular video store. Like, it was like a privately owned, let's say, Blockbuster or Hollywood Video. So I went in and I was like, these are some old movies. Like, why? And then I hit the door in the back. I had no idea where I was going. And when I went into the back, I was like, oh, shoot. Stuff was hanging up on the walls. You know, people were in there. And it almost was if you were in a forbidden place. Like, you should not be back here. You know what I mean? And I think that's what happens. People think that, oh, shoot, I can't go in here. Let me put my, you know, you watch some movies, they got the dark sunglasses and the trench coat, and they're going into, you know, a sex novelty shop. It's interesting.
But yes. And I'm here to say, let's have these conversations.
Yeah.
I'm here to say it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to ask whatever you want. It's okay for you to learn about your body.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of us, we don't even know our own pleasure potential.
Yeah.
We have no idea what our potential for pleasure is.
That's so
because
true.
we do things, you know, the same way. It's sort of like one time I gave the analogy of washing dishes. I said, no one necessarily has to teach you to wash the dishes, but you might start washing the pots before you start washing the glasses. You might start not, you know, usually when we wash them in a certain order. You know, we want the glasses first because we don't want the grease on the glass. You know, different things like that. And sex is the same way. Yeah, you may intuitively know you stick this in this hole, but there's so much more.
Right. There's a lot more. So, wow, we have 9 minutes left. This time goes so fast. I'm going to ask one more question. I know that went so fast. I'm going to try to do some rapid fire questions. So if you can answer them as quick as possible, that way I can get them all in. Because I told you we had a lot of questions. All right. Can sex be enjoyable with someone who is uncircumcised?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yep. Actually, in some instances, more pleasurable because the way the skin moves back and forth.
Okay. Because the person that asked this question is the person, I don't want to say who, but she was very grossed out. But you're saying that it could be, okay. Well, she's probably grossed out because it's not something, there's more men that are uncircumcised than are circumcised. It's just the United States. We're just circumcised men. That's very true.
Around the world, it's not, you know, so it's just a matter of getting used to it and just let her know don't ignore the foreskin as it gets erect. Just pull it down, play it around in the inside of the foreskin. It's loaded with nerve endings. Be careful with the tip, because they're more sensitive than circumcised men.
That's interesting. I never knew that. That's why you're here, to help us, to educate us. Okay, next question. I got to go quicker. Can a woman be allergic to sperm?
Yes, absolutely. I was allergic to my husband's sperm for years.
What did you do?
We had to use condoms for years.
Okay.
I actually built up a tolerance for it, and I went to the doctor, but they couldn't back then give us anything for it. But for the longest time, we used condoms for a while, and then I ended up building up a tolerance for it. But there is enzymes in there that we can be sensitive to.
Okay, wonderful. Well, not wonderful that you were allergic, but wonderful that you made it work. But wonderful that it all worked out in the end. Are bumps on a penis normal?
It depends on what kind of bumps we're talking about. There is something called PPP.
You don't want no boils now, people. You don't want no big old bumps. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It depends, what we're talking about. So there is something called PPP, pearly penile papules, and there's these bumps that go around the ridge of it's usually about 1 or 2 rows that go around the ridge of the head of the penis, and then right on the front. That's completely, it happens to some people. It's not an STI or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
But,
Go ahead.
Those are normal, but if we're talking about open sores or other type of painful sores and things like that, they definitely want to see a medical professional.
Wonderful. Okay. So this was a question. I'm going to read it just like she has it or he has it. I don't know if this is a male or a woman. I'm so stressed with sex right now. I'm so stressed with life right now. I can't focus on sex during sex. What should I do?
Okay. So she's in her head is what we kind of call monkey mind, and she's having trouble relaxing. So when she's inside of the sex act itself, she wants to try to focus her attention on what's going on. And the best way for her to do that is to focus on her breath. So release everything else and just breathe, but have her attention only on her breath as she breathes. Deep breaths. Now, this can also, if she's able to relax enough and pay attention to the breath and feel the sensation, this could cause a full body orgasm instead of just a genital focused orgasm.
And you're saying breath, not breast, right? You're saying breath, like breathing.
Like breathing. Okay. Yes, breathing, breath. Okay. So if she focuses on her in and out breath, that'll help her quiet her mind during sex.
Okay, awesome.
And then she can also pay attention to the senses, like sight, sound, things like that. Pay attention to the 5 senses, but I would suggest you start with paying attention to her breath first.
Okay, perfect. All right, can sex be good for the health? Is it good for you to have sex?
Oh, yes.
Does it do the body good, Coach Cain? Does it do the body good?
It does. It does. Everyone says, "You're smiling. You're so happy all the time." I said, "I am."
And your husband's probably smiling too, I'm sure, with all the knowledge you have.
Exactly. Also, like, for example, I tend to be sexual at night because I suffered from insomnia for a while. So if you want to relax and go to sleep, you have sex or have an orgasm. If you suffer, I suffer from migraines. You have a headache, have sex.
So wait, I've never heard that because, it's always the little joke that women say, "Not tonight, honey, I have a headache." But you're saying that
actually,
the man,
that is a myth.
So the man can say, "Well, let me fix that headache for you."
Yes. I have literally told hubby, "I have such a bad headache. Can you help me out?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah."
I got you, babe. I got you, boo. So, ladies, you can't use that anymore. Fellas, you better peep the game. She just told you that you can say, "I can handle that headache. You don't need ibuprofen. You don't need Tylenol. I got you."
I'm telling you, it has all kinds of health benefits. Yes.
Okay. All right. So, last one. What are some unique, fun ways to spice up your sex life? And you got about, I'll give you about 30, 40 seconds.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. You always have to bring novelty in. One of the things I suggest do is take away one of the senses. And what I mean by that is blindfold. If you blindfold your partner, it heightens other sensations that you will do. It heightens the other senses. So use blindfold. You can use a scarf to tie them to the bed because you're restraining them. And that's I call that kink. I call that kink light.
Kink light.
So you can use those. Yes. So you can do those types of things. You can role play. You can do it in different locations. You can discuss your fantasies and then start to act out those fantasies that you may have. Incorporate toys. It's endless what you can do. It really is endless. Change positions. With the positions, change your angle. So if you're doing doggy, you put your arms forward. If you lean back, if you twist to the side, all of these cause different type of sensations in the body. It feels different. So move a little bit. Elevate a pillow underneath your bottom for the male and the female. That creates a different sensation with sex. So you want to play and be creative, essentially.
And I think that's awesome. So many people, yes, it did. And I must have said awesome like 3 times, like, okay, that's awesome. Okay. Because I'm trying to take notes too. I'm trying to learn. I'm always a student.
Yes,
but I think it's important. I really think, you just gave some great tips and great ideas. So many people are so restrictive when it comes to sex, and they continue to do the same thing over and over and over and over again. So Coach Cain is saying, spice it up, dare to be different, do something different, research, go to a professional like Coach Cain. You do things online. Tell the people, you got just a couple of seconds. Well, I just want to say I'll put all your information out there. And thank you so much for joining me for part 2. Our conversations go so quickly.
It does. It does. Thank you for having me again.
You're so welcome. And quickly, just give your Instagram handle.
It's at Sex Coach Cain. Cain is spelled Cain.
Thank you so much, Coach Cain. Coach Cain. Have a good night. Have a great night. And hopefully, down the line, we'll have you back for part 3. Thank you so much. God bless. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Shine with Kendéll Lenice. Real talk for real people. Let's